Hey everyone, welcome back to Coffee Shop Talks. My name is Paulo Saldana, and I'm the founder of PowerWatts, an indoor training system. I'm a coach, physiologist, and I'm also the performance director of Israel Startup Nation World Tour professional cycling team. Today, I'm going to be talking to an interesting force of nature. He is a sports philanthropist. He's a world champion master cyclist, and he's also the force behind Israel's Startup Nation World Tour cycling team. He happens to be a friend of mine, and we've been friends for over 20 years. And during that time, we've shared a lot of sports experiences and life experiences. So hopefully today I'll delve into his evolution in cycling, his philanthropic endeavors, and our friendship and stories that we've shared along the way.
Everything is just fine. Thank you very much. I'm speaking to you from sunny Tel Aviv. So how bad can it be?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you look like there's a major glaring sun back there. I mean, what is it, 25, 30 degrees out there?
Listen, every day is paradise here. So we don't. It's funny because Israelis actually look at the weather, and this is a subject that I don't even understand over here because every day is perfect.
Well, judging by just about every single time I've been to Israel, and it's probably been 20, 25 times in the last few years, judging by the weather, every time I'm there, I think I've seen maybe 2 days of rain out of 23, 24 visits, which is pretty incredible. People don't realize, I mean, maybe they do, but for me, I never really understood how great a country it is for outdoor activity because the sunshine and just the warmth and because it's such an open society, you can pretty much do anything you want. It's essentially like me being in Canada except warmer.
Yeah, look, and as you know, the people here are as warm as the country. They're super warm, super enthusiastic. I mean, you've made friends here so easily, and I came here without any kind of a social network, and I would have to say, in just 4 short years, I probably have as many friends here as I ever had in Canada.
Yeah, no kidding. That's great. And I'm building my friendship network out there. Slowly but surely, I'm building it. So one of the things I wanted to delve into today was your sort of athletic development. When you came to see me, gosh, was it 1998 or 97, Sylvan? When was it that you first came to see me?
Yeah, it was it was the second year you ran your Arizona camp. So that would be the date. That would be the reference
Yes,
date.
22, 23 years ago, you came
Yeah.
to see me, and you were essentially a business executive working in a regular, supercharged schedule like everybody else. And you came to see me because you sort of had heard that your friends were working out of our training center and they had achieved some results. And tell me the story. Remember that you came in and I had a clipboard in my hand. Tell our viewers that story because it's a pretty funny one.
So first of all, I was introduced to you by Gerald Eisenman, and we used to
Yes.
go cross country skiing up in Tremblant. I have a chalet in Tremblant, or I had a chalet in Tremblant, and I used to go downhill skiing in the morning, and then Gerald and I would meet, and we'd go cross country skiing together. And I'm the worst cross country skier ever, um, but but um, but somehow I managed to keep up with Gerald, and he started talking about cycling, and he says, I bought a bike the summer before, so I knew a little bit about cycling, but I really, I rode around with guys in the neighborhood, and he says, "You got to meet this guy, Paulo. We do winter training indoors, and it's fantastic. You really should meet him." So I said, "Okay, that sounds good to me." And come see you, and you've got this clipboard as you just mentioned, and you start interviewing me, and you say, "Okay, so what are your goals?" And I said, "Well, um, really, what are my goals? I never really looked at it that way. I guess I just want to ride with the guys. I want to be able to ride with the guys in the neighborhood." So I see you scribbling an answer. And the interview sort of continued along those lines. And eventually you got around to telling me, we're going to have this training camp in Arizona. Would you like to join us? I said, really? Wow, that sounds good, but do you really think I can keep up with those guys? Because I had heard about some of the guys who were training with you, and they were, legends in the neighborhood. And you said, you know what? Let's see, let's get you started, and we'll see how you do. I said, okay, sounds good. So after a couple of weeks of indoor training with you, I think you told me, Sylvan, I think you'll be able to keep up with the guys in the training camp. Little did I know that it had nothing to do with my cycling abilities, but the fact that you needed an extra client to make ends meet on the trip. So here. So I was all flattered, but of course it had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with the financial calculations that you needed in order to do okay on the trip. So that was, I guess, that sort of launched me, because I came to that winter. I came really at the tail end of your training season with those guys.
Yeah.
So maybe I did 3 weeks or 4 weeks indoors before we went to Arizona. And remember, I had never done a 100-kilometer ride in my whole life, and we built it up. And the last day, I remember, we did. The last day was Mount Lemmon. It was an epic ride in itself. But the second to last day, we did a century, 100 miles. And remember, I had never done 100 kilometers, let alone 100 miles in a single day. And each day you would ask me, the first day was, interesting and hard. And the second day, I think we went to the Mexican border. And the third day we did the century. And the last day of the trip, it was a 4-day trip. And on the last day, we did this epic climb of Mount Lemmon, 45-kilometer climb, which is just really an epic climb. And each day this was another thing. Everybody shared rooms, and I got the short straw, because everyone was in. You had these loft.
That's right.
Loft suites at, I don't remember which hotel chain it was, but they were like Marriott. I think it was a Marriott loft suites.
Marriott.
And so there was a bedroom upstairs and a bedroom downstairs, and the walls were thin as paper. And I got the short straw because we were 4 in the room. We were you, Rob, who was assisting you, Rob's cousin from the States, who was driving the bus, and I had the loft bedroom upstairs. So we were 4, and that room didn't smell too good. And I have to say, I wasn't that crazy about the idea of training camps and sharing rooms, but I sucked it up, and it was a good sport. But every day you would ask me, okay, so how was that? And I'd say, I got through the day. I guess it was good. And each day I felt a little bit better. Of course, a little bit more fatigued, but a little bit better. And with each new, notch on my belt, each new achievement that I had never done before, it was very satisfying and exciting for me. And of course, the last day was Mount Lemmon, and the plan was, nobody explained to me what the plan was, but you had a plan, which all the other guys seemed to know. I was the only one who didn't seem to be in on this. Was we were going to ride to halfway, which is called Windy Point.
That's right. Windy Point.
Halfway.
Good memory.
13 mile mark, or 14-mile mark, I don't remember, out of 27 miles. And we all ride in a very controlled pace to the halfway point. Then we get off the bikes. Everybody, does his bathroom business and takes a bar or whatever it is. And little did I know that we all hop back on the bike, and then it's like a race to the top. Nobody told me about the second part. So I was off behind a tree, doing my business. And I come out, and everybody's gone. And literally everybody's gone. I'm the only one there. I'm the only one left. And Rob's cousin, the van driver, he says, no, they all got off on their bikes and they left. So I proceeded to get on my bike. Wasn't very happy with this scenario, and start to chase you guys. And I'd taken my sweet time, so you guys were minutes up the road on me, and I started catching the guys sort of one by one. I remember I caught Big Jeff Solomon, a big boy.
Oh yeah.
Going up the mountain. He was a downhill. He told me he was a downhill specialist. And then I caught Lenny and Gary going up, and they decided they were like going to ride together, and at a controlled pace. And then there was the lead group, and you were up there with Alan and Victor, and
Mark,
I could see you guys in the distance. And, you were the last guys I had to catch. And I caught you guys in a stealth manner, very quietly. And I was just riding there at the back. And those two other guys, they didn't notice me at all. They were suffering, going up the mountain. And you were pacing them, but you looked back, and sure enough, you spotted me. And you came around to the back. And I was huffing and puffing. You even gave me a couple of little pushes to encourage me and to stick with those guys at that point. And I proceeded to ride to the top with your best clients. And
it was an epic ride.
Yeah, that was an achievement for me. And again, when I finished with those guys, I think I surprised them. And I guess I would have to say that was the beginning of my my real interest in cycling, other than just riding around the streets of Montreal. And then so the following winter, I came in early, in November, I guess you started up, and we were doing all of your crazy rides. I remember Morgul Bismarck was how you set our threshold, and that was like a 30-minute epic challenge. And I think I of all those guys, I got the best time going up there. And at some point in the spring, you mentioned, Sylvan, you're getting pretty good at this. Have you ever considered racing? And so I had no idea there were races. I said, racing? Really? Like, where? He said, well, yeah, there are races all over the place. And I didn't know anything about it. But when my friend Harold Stotland, sometime, and I rode all summer, I rode outside with, used to go on the lakeshore and do these rides. And then my friend Harold Stotland mentioned to me sometime in August, late August, he said, there is this regular Wednesday night bike race, and you can get a racing license. You can get a one-day racing license. Would you like to go and do it? I said, absolutely. I'd love to go and do that. So we decided we would go and watch the first week. And I see these guys coming around, it's this Criterium circuit in Laval, in the industrial park in Laval. And I have to say, I thought they were professionals. Like, they looked, it was a master's race, but they were so fast that I thought this was a professional race. And there I saw Martin Roseboom, who had sold me my bike. And by the way, I went to his shop. He sold me a bike, a helmet, shoes, a pump, a jersey, a bib short, socks, you name it, gloves. I mean, you name it. And I think I paid in total, taxes included, $2,500, which is kind of funny today when I have wheels that cost more than $2,500 today. So it's kind of funny to think that I was completely equipped and I was ready to go with all that equipment. And I saw posters of Martin and his brothers who had raced. They were Belgian, and they come from Belgium.
Sure.
And they had raced in Europe, and I saw posters of them, and I was in awe of this guy. And here he was in that Wednesday night race, And the next week, Harold and I went back, we bought our one-day licenses, and we joined the race. And I was literally the last racer in the peloton, dangling at the back. And and there were guys getting shelled and dropped, and I had to keep my wits about me so that when somebody, 4 or 5 bikes ahead of me was getting dropped, that I would anticipate that
Cover the gap.
and go around them and try to catch back onto the peloton. And it was important because, I didn't have the skills to ride anywhere else than being literally at the back. I didn't really know how to negotiate the turns. I was probably spending way too much energy on
Right.
all of that. And yet I was able to finish the race. And I will say that the sense of elation that I had following that race is probably my single highlight of my entire cycling career. It sounds stupid, but I was so pleased with myself at the time, thinking that I had ridden in this professional race and that I'd been able to stick and finish with the peloton. And that was, before, my Canadian titles, my Quebec titles, my Canadian titles, my Pan Am titles, my Maccabea Games titles, and of course my World Championship titles. So despite all those other subsequent successes, I really would have to say that funny race, my very first race in Laval, the fact that I could stick with the peloton and finish the race, probably is my proudest moment.
Yeah, that initial new feeling of elation, knowing that you could fit in there and survive, is pretty strong. I've had the same memories about my first athletic events, my first Ironman. I was like, wow, I actually was able to race with these guys. So I get it. It's a memorable feeling. And I'm wondering, you were talking about Mount Lemmon, and I so remember that ride. I mean, we had it in our heads. We're gonna drop it. We're gonna get out of sight, out of Sylvan's sight, and he's never going to see us again. Let's work with his head, let's play with him, and let's do this, and we were hammering pretty good, and that's why guys were getting dropped and you were passing people, because we were hammering pretty good. And I remember thinking, when I saw you come around the corner from behind, I'm like, this guy, where does he get this dogged determination? That's, if I can use one word to think about what I saw in you there, it was essentially dogged determination. Throw the bone, dog goes after it. No matter what happens, he's going to chase no matter what. Do you think that is one of
First
the
of all,
singular...
let's agree that it wasn't training or physical skill, because
Exactly.
it was, I was not a very good cyclist. I caught those guys with dogged determination, as you called it, not with legs. I caught them with my head, not with my legs, because
Exactly.
I didn't have it. I was probably the worst cyclist on that training camp.
Do you think, though, that dogged determination is what brought you to sort of overcome obstacles in performance that maybe you might have had limits because you started late a little bit? But do you think that's the single most determinant feature for your performances?
So I always like to say that this is the strongest muscle in the body, and
Right.
And really, it's like when a mother can pick up a car that's run over her child. In the physical world, that's not possible. But of course, this can make you achieve things that are physically beyond your limits. And I've always felt that I'm a competitive person, and that put in a situation where my personal pride is at stake, and I always only really raced for my own personal pride and satisfaction, and where my personal pride was at stake, that I could sort of zoom in or zone in on the prize and do a lot better than my physical ability. So I was always I was never very good on training days. A lot of the time, unless you turned it into a game of sorts. But if my mind wasn't in it, I used to get dropped on our team training rides. We'd go up to Saint Joseph, and they would leave me like a dog, and I would get dropped because I needed a reason to suffer that badly. And somehow, when on race day, I had that reason, I really raced better than my abilities, and people have told me, I've seen so many guys who train much better than they race. Well, I had the good fortune of racing much better than I trained.
How many bike races do you think you've done in your life?
So I think I've counted all my medals. So I probably have won between 125 and 140 races. And my guess is I've probably done, let's say, 10 years. I've probably done 400 or 500 races. Yeah.
500 races. Wow. Amazing. Incredible. I started way before you, and I ended right around when you kind of started coming in, and I maybe did 100. So that's
the difference is you raced at a higher level. I like to keep my achievements in perspective. And people say, "Oh, Sylvan, you're so good." The truth is, I always raced as a masters, and I have this funny thing where people who don't really know about cycling, they say, "So, are you going to be in the Tour de France this summer?" People actually ask me this question, and how do you answer a question like that, other than with a little bit of irony? And I say, "Yes, I'm definitely going to be in the Tour de France." And I hear that Pele is training to go back and be in the World Cup of soccer. Yes, there are a lot of 60-year-old professional athletes who are competing in the hardest sport in the entire world. Sure, of course I'm going to be in the So, people ask me these stupid questions, how do you answer? And they say, well, I don't know, I don't, well, if you don't know. That's true. You don't know. But, you're not really asking if Wayne Gretzky, maybe a couple years younger than me, is going back and playing in the NHL, as good as he was. Okay. And I was not Wayne Gretzky. Let's be clear about that. Okay. So now listen, I'm just a masters, but I'm very proud of all of my achievements. And what's really fun for me is to race against guys who did compete professionally. So, for example, Steve Bauer came. I consider him to be Canada's greatest ever cyclist. I know that Ryder won the Giro, but Steve Bauer was there. He finished second in the World Championships. He wore the yellow jersey. I don't know how many days in the Tour de France, and so there I am competing against Steve Bauer, and of course he didn't win. And after the race he comes up to me and says, "Sylvan, are all your races this hard?" And I took that as the greatest compliment. This is a guy who did, I don't know, 12 Tours de France, how many Giros, World Championships,
right.
Paris-Roubaix, you name it, he did everything. And he found our little Masters Championships to be hard. And, I took that as great validation.
Amazing. One of the things when you sort of talk about your evolution as a rider, one of the things that jumps to mind is a lot of Masters champion cyclists actually train sort of like professionals. They're riding 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week. They're doing their altitude camps and their hill intervals and this and that and the other. And people actually don't believe me when I tell them how little you actually train. So I wanted you to kind of confirm what I tell people, which is generally that you would not believe how little his preparation is for, other than a few little camps here and there. Everything else is just peppered with these short intensity pieces. So speak to that a little bit and confirm what I'm telling people.
So I'm going to say one bad thing about having reached my 60s, and I am 62 in bicycle years, because my birthday, I'm turning 62 this year, and you know how it is. You're the age of that you turn the year of your birthday. So having reached my 60s, I have to say that it actually got a little harder for me. And why is that? Because at age 60, people start to retire, and people whose passion is cycling, and they've managed to find a way to retire from their day job. And remember, I raced against people from all walks of life. Nick Toscas was a bus driver, and another guy works in construction sites, and then another guy's a doctor, and other people, they come from all walks of life, professions,
Right.
physical labor, everything. And I sat it. I like to say I sat on my ass all day long in an office, so we were all, earlier on, we were all sort of, I guess, able, or we had a certain amount of free time. And, I had 4 children. I had 4 children to raise with my wife. And I had a certain limited amount of time. And when you first met me, I was extremely busy. I mean, I used to work extremely long weeks. I mean, I was working 10, 11-hour days and literally 7 days a week. So I had to go to Tucson with you in order to find myself a block of 4 days to be able to actually ride my bike. And otherwise, I rode my bike at 6 a.m. for 1 hour, several mornings a week. And that's how much I rode. And then I managed to find a way to ride on the weekends in the bike races, as well as the Wednesday nights. So, and I literally raced myself into shape. And in the winter, I went to Power Watts, or the predecessor of Power Watts before you called it Power Watts. I was one of your original clients. So today I'm racing against a lot of people who have retired, and since cycling is their passion, they've essentially become professional cyclists at age 60, and they train, as you just said, like professionals. And I find that a little bit hard because I'm far from retiring. I'm in a way, I'm kind of busier than I've ever been, because I have a funny schedule with the hours. I'm 7 hours ahead here in Tel Aviv. So, all the stuff that happens after a certain time in the day in North America, I really have to deal with it the next day. So I wake up early in the morning and I'm dealing with yesterday's activities in North America. So I'm pretty busy. And I'm not a professional cyclist, and it's not my ambition to be a professional cyclist. But I'm training against guys. I'm racing against guys now who are training like pros. So what's my schedule? I do Power Watts Tel Aviv. I do it a couple of times a week, and it is fantastic. The best bang for your buck out there. And for all you Zwifties who have gotten attached to Zwift, let me say.
He is not paid to say this, folks. He's not being paid to say that.
This is of my own volition. I'm not a big fan of Zwift. I don't really like the app. I think that if you brought your software team to Zwift, you could take them light years ahead of where they are. There's so many things that I don't like about it, including the fact that, depending on what kind of a trainer you're on and what kind of a power meter you're using, it either overestimates or underestimates your power and your weight and all these other things. I'm not a big fan of Zwift, but Power Watch it's a way really to get the biggest bang for your buck. So because in Tel Aviv it's kind of hard to get out of the city during the week, and there's a lot of traffic here, and in order to go to the really interesting places to ride, you kind of have to put the bike in the car. Unlike Montreal, that's the one thing that I like less about Tel Aviv. The weather is super. The terrain out in the countryside is fantastic. There's hills and stuff, and it's really great. But you really have to throw the bike in the car, and I don't get to do that more than really about once a week. I on Saturdays, it's pretty much the only time I drive because there's no traffic on Saturday here, and I get out in the morning and we go out on these beautiful rides. But otherwise, I'm training a couple times a week at Power Watts, and I'm getting my interval training. So I probably put in about maybe 5-6 hours a week total.
Yeah, that's what I tell people.
Against guys who are doing I don't know, as you said, 20-25 hours a week. And there are a lot of Israelis who do it. So I have the same problem here in Israel. And here I'm not racing against 60-year-olds. I'm racing against the Peloton. And those guys, again, they're doing these big volume of riding. and it's hard, but I like it. And I love to compete. I love to compete, and so it gets my juices flowing. And as I said, personal pride is on the line.
So, speaking of competition, I know you're not just a road racer, you also raced a track. But when I was thinking about what I was going to ask you about the track, I I actually started to think about your lack of experience on a track, on a velodrome. You must have some kind of record for the least amount of rides on a track prior to winning a world championship. So let's talk a little bit about your track experience, how little you do there, but how much you enjoy it or not.
So I'll tell you how I ended up on the track in the first place. I didn't know anything about the track. I didn't have any particular interest in going and trying a velodrome. I'd never watched a velodrome race in my life. I really didn't know
Right.
anything about it at all. But Bernard
Right.
Vives, who was a trackie and my teammate and friend,
Yep.
he told me one day, Sylvan, you could be national champion on in the velodrome. You really should come out and try it. And I didn't think much of what he said, but I had this old TT bike, and I had bought a new bike, and I had to get rid of this old TT bike that I wanted to sell. And I was at La Bicicletta bike store in Toronto. And my friend Heath, who was great at wheeling and dealing, I said, Heath, I've got this Trek TT bike. What do I do with it? Can you take it off my hands? And he says, I've got just the thing for you. And he traded it. He traded me the TT bike, which was, with all the bells and whistles, for a track bike, a Villiers track, aluminum track bike, with everything
Mm-hmm.
on it. But the bike was probably worth $800. And
Yeah.
when he said he would trade me the track bike, of course, the thing that the light bulb went off. I heard Bernard Vives' voice in my ear telling me, Sylvan, you could be national champion on the track. So I said, you know what? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
sure. And once I made the swap, now I own it's like when I bought my first TT bike, by the way. I'd never done a TT in my life. I had
Right.
done one in a stage race in Charlevoix on my regular handlebars. And once I bought a TT
Sure.
bike, well, it meant I had to do all the TTs. And eventually, I won that national championship in TT and multiple provincial championships. So I got reasonably good in TT because I owned the bike. So this was my opportunity. I had a track bike, and I went the very first time I went on a track. It was actually the provincial championship in Bromont, and I got on the track in the warm up, and I didn't even know how to ride, and I was kind of screaming to myself because I was so scared. But sure enough, at that provincial
I think other
championship,
people heard you screaming out loud, actually.
yeah, yes, more than once, by the way. So at that very first time I'd ever ridden a track bike, I won the pursuit. I was provincial champion in pursuit. And what was funny was Bernard was there, and he told me, Sylvan, it was 2K at our age group in the 50s, 50-year-old category, and it was 2 kilometers. And Bernard told me, Sylvan, I think you did 2.3K because I wasn't able to ride down on the black line, and keep it to the minimum distance. And then the second time I was ever on a track in my whole life, I signed up for the World Masters Games in Sydney, Australia, and they had road races. So I went to Sydney, but they also had track races the week before, and I brought my track bike, and I signed up for the scratch because I really didn't know anything else, and I didn't know the points race, which ended up being my best race in the end. But I didn't really know how it all worked because I'd never been on a track, and as I said, I'd never even watched track cycling. I didn't know anything about the track, and we had qualification heats in order to get to the final. So as soon as the race started, the heat started, they were only qualifying 12 of the 24 would get to the final. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't feel that comfortable to ride in a Peloton. Again, this was literally my second time ever on the track.
Right.
So from the gun, I decided I'm going to attack, and the guys didn't bother chasing with me because there were 11 other spots open. So I ended up lapping the field in the qualification heat, and of course I qualified for the final. So armed with this brilliant knowledge, and being a little bit skittish and afraid to ride in the Peloton because I'd never done it before, I tried that trick again in the final. But of course they had all seen me and they said, okay, he's a ringer.
Yeah.
We're not. And I was pretty strong in those days. You know, I was, you know, pretty good at TT, and you know, I was a pretty good road racer at the time. So you know, I could do those things, which was to attack and eventually lap the field. But my trick was out of the bag, and of course it didn't happen, and I ended up finishing, you know, in somewhere in the Peloton. And so that was my second track experience. And again,
Right.
you know, so I basically competed at provincials and nationals and the odd international competition. And I signed up for the World Championship. And I guess on my third or fourth try, I did end up winning the points race. And then a couple of years later, I won it again.
Right.
So I have two gold medals, you know, at Worlds. In spite of the fact that I've probably ridden on a track maybe only 30 times in my whole life. Now,
That's got some kind of record.
So now I have built a fabulous world-class velodrome here in Tel Aviv, so I won't have that excuse well, which has been closed during Corona. Sadly, you know, we only just had opened, and I got to ride it a couple of times, but basically it closed down at the beginning of March, and it's been closed since then. So I really haven't had the opportunity to ride on the track. But I won't have that excuse in the future, as I have really my own home track. I have the key to the velodrome, so I can use the track when I want. I actually have my own hours at the track where I can invite my friends, and it's mine to use as I wish. And I hope that you will come and ride the track with me on one of your visits, on several of your visits. And so I'm going to probably develop some kind of a little track group. We will ride at noon to 2 o'clock. I have the track 7 days a week.
Nice. Wow. Well, I mean, it's a nice segue into some of your other philanthropic projects. I know the velodrome is one of them. Maybe let's talk a little. I mean, we can't talk about all your projects, or else this would be like a 6-hour show. But which are the ones that revolve around sport that people might be interested? Because people maybe associate you with, you know, the velodrome in Israel and bringing the Giro to Israel, and also possibly the professional cycling team. But you have a lot of other pieces that are attached to that. So maybe just tell our viewers a little bit about some of the sports-specific philanthropic projects that you're on.
So in cycling, you named a couple of the major things. I mean, bringing the Giro here, you know, that was epic.
Yeah.
Probably a week before the Giro arrived here, maybe 95 or 98% of Israelis had never even heard of the Giro d'Italia. And I would say if the Giro were to come to Canada, you'd probably have a similar number, you know, above 90% probably have never even heard of the Giro. Everybody knew the Tour de France by name, not because they really followed cycling, but just by name, because it's the most famous race. But here we are with the sport's second most famous race. And when it came here, Israelis just got it. They understood that we were on the world stage, and we had 1 million Israelis come into the street and cheer like amazing, especially for the home team, the Israel Cycling Academy, my Israel Cycling Academy team, which is now Israel Startup Nation. And they cheered for the home team, which was really amazing to see their enthusiasm and, you know, inherent understanding that we were on the world stage and that this was something big.
Right.
Almost 1 billion television viewers saw the entire country of Israel, from Haifa in the north all the way down to Eilat in the south, with one full day in the national capital of Jerusalem. I mean, those were probably three of the most magical days of my entire life. So, I mean, that's a really, really big thing. Of course, owning the professional team, that's also very exciting. And this is not just um, this is not a commercial team. This is a philanthropic project. This is an ideological mission that has as its goal, it has two goals. One, to develop the sport of cycling in Israel. And as I said, the Giro really brought the sport to another level here in the country, where kids watching, this famous race, literally in front of their house, could aspire, well, could talk to their parents about buying them a bike, and could aspire to reach the highest level of the sport. So, developing the sport here in Israel, and we have a number of great Israeli prospects, some of whom are already on the pro team, and others are in the pipeline with our continental team to get to the pro level, and others who are just teenagers right now. And we hope to develop them through the velodrome. Also, take a page out of British cycling and use the velodrome to develop road racers. So that's part one of the mission. And part two is really to show off the home country and to be ambassadors for Israel all around the world, wherever we race, and to be ambassadors for peace. And when I say ambassadors for peace, it's on our jersey. We are officially ambassadors for peace from the Paris Center. Each of us has a certificate from the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation, which is an institute founded by former Nobel Prize winner and Israeli President Shimon Peres, very, very famous and brilliant man. And so we're each peace ambassadors, and we are trying to, I guess, show the normal face of Israel around the world. So those are the two missions. So this is really an ideological and philanthropic mission. And in terms of other sports, well, I also support a number of other sports here. I support the judo team. We have world champions, Israeli world champions in judo, and judo is a very popular sport here because we have those world champions. I supported our baseball team, which qualified for the Tokyo Olympics, which won't be held in 2020, but they'll be going in 2021. And I'm very proud of that. We were one of the very few teams. Japan and the United States, and real baseball, and Cuba, and real baseball countries. And here we are with Israel. Israel is, I guess, the outlier, and we're going to be vying for a medal at the Tokyo Olympics. So I get involved in sports. I'm involved in with the whole Olympic sport movement here in Israel. I also built bicycle paths here in Tel Aviv as part of the idea of, I like to say, transforming Tel Aviv into the Amsterdam of the Middle East, where we have perfect weather here, as we discussed earlier, and we have terrible traffic, as we discussed earlier as well in this conversation. And my idea is to help provide a bicycle path infrastructure that will allow commuters to consider the bike rather than getting in the car. And I really believe that we can develop this. Amsterdam was a car-centric city until they decided after the war to transform society and to encourage use of the bicycle. And they built a bicycling infrastructure to enable a lot of people literally to commute. And it's very normal now in Amsterdam or in Copenhagen to commute to work. And certainly we have better weather in Tel Aviv than in Copenhagen, which is pretty far north. And I hope that we can encourage Israelis to become bicycle commuters to their places of work, and contribute to the greening of Tel Aviv and taking cars off the street. So, as I said, I'm sort of involved in a lot of different sporting areas.
Right.
And
the bike path piece is an important one, because whenever I come to Israel, we always end up riding on the bike path to Power Watts as a warm up to go do our Power Watts. It's about maybe 40-minute ride or so, 30, 40-minute ride. And remember the first time you said, Paulo, I built this bike path. And it was almost surreal to be on a bike path that you'd built, because I thought back to the day when you came in and I had my clipboard and thinking, okay, well, let's see what you're all about. And now we're riding on a bloody bike path that you built. Anyway, all that to say, too, that if ever, any of you have ever ridden with Sylvan on the bike path, I just would say that maybe you might want to stay a few bike lengths behind, because he's going at 300 watts every which way around the bike path, and I'm just struggling to hang on his wheel just to get to where we're going. It's insane, and there's people everywhere all over the bike paths, pedestrians crossing, little tricycles, you name it. So it becomes like road hazards in there, and it's like a survival contest to get the power watts.
Let's just remember one thing. I'm not always late, but I'm never early. So we usually have to hustle to get to Power Watts on time for the beginning of the class, and that's the reason. There's a reason that we're riding at this breakneck speed, and of course I've ridden it so many times that I know every turn and every inch of that bike path. So I kind of know my way around. So you need to come here and ride with me a few more times, that you won't have so much trouble keeping up.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I also thought back to when you were training more consistently over the years. I got involved a little bit with an organization called B210 that you later became, I guess, funder for. You were involved with them philanthropically as well, and they basically exist to help Canadian athletes achieve podium excellence at the Olympics. And I remember, you had this natural curiosity about things, and I used to flip articles to you on research into endurance sports, and it kind of, maybe fed that a little bit. And I remember over the years you telling me that if I ever came across a diamond in the rough, like a young kid with talent in whatever sport, it didn't matter, but maybe didn't have the means and had too many obstacles, but was a little bit outside the norm of what a national or a sports organization might consider supporting, that I should come to you. I'll never forget this. And I really thought, wow, what's an interesting possibility. And I did come across a few athletes across the years, and I did come to you. And actually, you never said no, Sylvan. There was not ever a time when I brought you an athlete that was missing opportunity that you didn't agree to help in some way, whether it's just supporting financially their endeavor for a year or two, or equipment, or training camps, or any of those things. And one of the conditions early on that you told me, listen, Paulo, we'll do this together, but one of my conditions is that it has to be anonymous. Don't go marketing this around. And I always thought that it's something that's always stuck in my head, that, that's really true giving. When you can give to an athlete and it's not something that people are walking around thumping their chests about, that's pretty noble, So I've always really appreciated that in you. And that act actually has led to the development of some pretty interesting athletes. One athlete I can remember is a guy that people know now called Michael Woods. I remember when he came to see me at a training camp here in the townships in Quebec, I thought, wow, he's got an engine. And I remember speaking to you about him, and you told me, Paulo, let's do it. And you, in fact, supported Mike for the first 2 years of his career, that was allowing him to take the jump to go to the level where he signed a world tour deal. So, and he always thanks you for it. But it's not something that you're sitting in the background doing these things. It's kind of interesting that you're responsible for the development of these guys.
I would like to say the following. You mentioned I never said no. That's not about them. That's about you. That's about my respect for your judgment, for your ability to assess the potential, both physical and psychological potential of various athletes. And that was the reason I made the proposal to you. So I didn't meet Michael Woods when I agreed to when I agreed to support him, because I knew you.
Sure.
So I didn't need to go and have a whole discussion with him. And it was easy for me to stay in the background and even to be anonymous, really, because I didn't need to meet Michael Woods. You had met him, and my respect for you for, I've seen all the work you've done with athletes in a variety of sports. And now, my respect for you is so high that you are the sports performance director in my professional team, Israel Startup Nation. And I like to say that, that's your official title, but what I really like to call you is you're my strategic advisor. So, I have the world of respect for you, Paulo. And so I didn't need to meet the athletes. I didn't need to be out in front. I could just sit in the background because I knew that you were, nurturing these athletes, and you were going to get whatever potential was possible to be had out of these athletes. Now, the fact that Woodsy has become really one of the top riders on the professional scene and one of the best climbers in the entire world, I mean, it's a thing of great satisfaction, certainly for you and for me. I've gotten to know him, and he's such a wonderful young man, and he's so appreciative, and he's such a fighter. He didn't have it easy. He came to the sport late. He had his shares of crashes and bumps and bruises, and not knowing how to negotiate the peloton, and being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and various different things. But he's turned himself into really quite the professional cyclist, and I think we can both be very proud of this. And of course, listen, he earned it, but everybody needs a little help along the way. And I'm very proud of what we've been able to do, and I'm proud of him. And my only regret is that he doesn't ride for Israel Startup Nation, to tell you the truth, because I'd love to have him. And we have 3 Canadians on our World Tour team. That's not an accident, given that you and I are Canadian. And we have 3 additional Canadians on our continental team, including Ben Perry, who used to be on the big team. And so we've got 6 Canadians in our system. And I rode, as a matter of fact, if you recall last summer in Harrogate, I came to the World Championships, and my favorite thing is still to ride with those guys. And I went on one of their pre-race training days, and I loved riding with those guys. And here we were. I guess there were 6 riders, 3 of whom were my riders from my professional team. And I told the other 3 guys, if you guys weren't all under contract, I'd take the bunch of you. And, at the time we were still Pro Conti, so I couldn't come to Woodsy and say, in good conscience, like, you worked so hard to get to the top level. And I told him, listen, I would love for you to come to ride for my team, but as your friend, I wouldn't advise you to do so, because we were still Pro Conti at the time. And I said, if you want to ride in the biggest races, you've got to be at the World Tour. You work too hard to get there for you to step back. And my advice would be, not that he was ever really considering it, but just a few months later, we joined the World Tour, and had things been a little different, maybe we'd have been able to talk him and Hugo and Antoine Duchesne to coming on, and we'd have an even bigger Canadian contingent on my team. And I would love that, because, what we didn't mention is there was a great Pro Conti Canadian team called Spider Tech, and I was an early, I guess, sponsor, for lack of a better word, because my name didn't appear anywhere. But I was an early sponsor of Spider Tech, and I was very sad when the team folded. So, in a sense, Spider Tech was to Canada what Israel Startup Nation is to Israel in terms of helping develop the sport, and providing an avenue for the best cyclists in our respective countries to reach the highest level. So, but my heart, a little piece of my heart, remains in Canada, and that's why. And my strategic advisor also remains in Canada. So we have a good scouting system for Canada. So hopefully we'll be able to bring a pipeline of Canadian riders, as well as Israeli riders, onto our team, and we'll have a real character. Like Mitchelton Scott has preponderance of Australian and New Zealand riders. NTT, has a number of African riders. I think it's kind of nice when these programs give back to their countries, and countries that are not in the mainstream, not European countries, in the mainstream of the sport. So providing an avenue for Israeli riders, providing an avenue for Canadian riders, which is not that easy. And, today we have more World Tour riders, and I like to take part of the credit for that, more Canadian World Tour riders than we've ever had in history. So, and three of them are on my team, and three of them are on three other teams. So, 6 Canadian World Tour riders, it's more than we've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, you talk about the Israel Startup Nation team and the Canadian content in there, and it makes me think. We have regular meetings on the operations of the team and all kinds of strategies with regards to the team, and
lately we have weekly meetings.
Weekly, exactly.
Lately we've had weekly meetings in this crazy time of Corona. Strategically planning for next year. We have a long runway.
Exactly.
We may not be racing today, but we still have to plan for the future.
But you are deeply involved in that process, probably much more so than anyone else who's underwriting the cost of a team. You fundamentally seem to really enjoy the process. I mean, the sport inside out, the players, you understand it fundamentally, strategically. So your input in all our meetings is not only valued, but I can tell that you're really jazzed about it. Is that one of your favorite things, is to have these meetings and talk about different riders and how to strategize about races and things like that? Because you seem to be really into it.
So look, racing is racing, right? So although I was a lowly masters racer, ultimately racing is racing. And I think, when I go to the races and, we have the DS talking strategy with the team and what we're doing, I usually have something to contribute. And I don't talk for the sake of talking, of course, because that would be ridiculous. But sometimes I'll pipe in with an idea, and it'll trigger an additional conversation, because racing is racing, and I do know a little bit about racing, so it earns the respect. And I ride with the guys too. Like I said, I'll ride with them on their rest days. I'll go to the training camps. We ride together.
Right.
And I'll ride on some of their preparatory days, like I did with the Canadian national team in Harrogate. Mm-hmm. And so, they see the team owner riding alongside them. And I guess there's a certain level of respect that comes with that. And that's probably my favorite thing. So if you ask me, do I like talking about it? No, I like actually being with the guys and having the opportunity to ride with them. And to hear from them, their real issues that they have, whether it's their training, their nutrition, the equipment that we use, to get the race strategies that we employ, to get from them, real feedback, which then is somewhat useful for me when we talk, and I am the CEO of the team. When we talk at that strategic level, well, I do have some feedback that I can bring from the riders themselves that might not have reached the team manager or the DSs. So I feel like I'm able to contribute, and I do. All I want is for us. I'd be happy if I didn't have to say a word, and and we were really achieving at a very high level. That would be great. But I really want our success. I want success for this team, because success brings the kind of notoriety to my goals, the 2 goals that I mentioned. It certainly jazzes up the population in Israel about the sport of cycling. And, we get so much more coverage because we have the pro team, because the Giro was here. I mean, there's, we're in the newspaper all the time. We're on TV. And so, we have a lot of coverage. So our success breeds interest here in the country, and our success abroad, again, as I say, puts the home country in the best possible light, which is another one of my goals. My official title, when I moved here, I had business cards printed with a new title, And my title is Self-Appointed Ambassador at Large for the State of Israel. So I do a lot of projects, and sports, of course, is such a great vehicle to promote the country. But I do a lot of different projects to promote the country, and I really am an ambassador for the country. And because I am self-appointed, fortunately, I cannot be reassigned or sent home or fired. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and I'm very happy with my job, and I'm very happy with the achievements to date.
And rumor has it that you're quote unquote just getting started. So I'm curious to see what's on the horizon.
Yes, this is my slogan. I am just getting started. Yes.
Awesome.
So there's a long runway and a bright future for the team, for Israel Startup Nation, and I'm going to keep doing this because because I think it's important and good work. I think that sport is a vehicle to build bridges and new friendships, and we can compete really hard against each other in the spirit of good sportsmanship, and I think that's a real model for the way the rest of society can work. And I think there's a reason that people tune into sports, and why we're missing live sports in this moment of Corona. We're starved for live sports. I mean, how many times can you watch Michael Jordan and the Barcelona Dream Team repeats? We've seen it already.
It doesn't do it for me. I for some reason I can't watch replayed sports. I mean, I know what's happened and I don't get jazzed about it, but
you know who won.
Yeah,
you already know the outcome.
Much.
And the magic of sports is you never know the outcome. This is the beauty of sports.
Right. And so one of the things, first of all, how many Olympic Games have we been to together? I think our first one was what? Was it Vancouver? The first one was? No, it was Athens.
Our first one was Athens. And how did it come about? Is you were coaching Manon Jutras, who got named to the Olympic. And you were coaching Manon Jutras, and I said to you at one point, I said, listen, Paulo, if Manon makes it to the Olympics, we're going to the Olympics, okay? And the prior Olympics that I had been to were the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. So between 76 and 1984, I had not been to an Olympic Games. Anyway, one day you called me up and you said, Sylvan, pack your bags. We're going to the Olympics. So I knew that Manon had made it. And you and I had quite an exciting trip there, including meeting Eric Zabel, the famous Eric Zabel, where we had our bikes. We had our bikes and we wore our team uniforms we had at the time. I was I think I had the Calion, my master's team Calion outfit, and you had some other sort of, I don't know, Power Watts thing, and we were on our way to the time trial course to help prepare Manon for her time trial, and Manon and Lynn Bessette also, which you imparted a little bit of advice at the time. Those were our two entries, and we were riding, and there was some guy in a off his bike on his mobile phone in a bus stop. And you said to me, Sylvan, I think we just rode by. I think that was Eric Zabel in the bus stop. And I said, really? And I said, here, let's turn around and see. So you and I made a U-turn. We went back around, and Zabel got on his bike at that point, and we just talked all the way as we rode toward the time trial course. And I asked Eric, I said, Eric, you're not a time trial. You're not doing the time trial. Why are you going to the course? He says, oh no, I go to help Jan, meaning Jan Ulrich. And I said, okay, well, Eric, you tell Jan from Sylvan, good luck. He says, okay, I tell him. And now to complete that full circle, we have Rick Zabel, Eric's son, on Israel Startup Nation. And so I'm in contact with Eric Zabel all these years later, and he actually remembers that ride that we rode together to the time trial course. And how much fun was that? And because the policeman, this was a magical moment for me. Policemen saw us in our whatever racing uniforms that we had. They thought we were Olympians. So they
Win the
opened the
race.
barriers and they gave us a motorcycle, I guess lead vehicle to motor pace us on the
Sure.
time trial course, and that was kind of fun.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
So to answer your question, we were at Athens. The
Right.
next one was Vancouver.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we were at together London.
London.
We were in London
And
Rio.
yes,
And Rio.
Rio.
So we
4.
were at four Olympics, and hopefully in 2021 we will make it our 5th Olympic Games together, because I will be there to support Israeli athletes in a variety of sports, and I'm looking forward to go heading out to Tokyo. And I love Japan, and I love their food, and we'll hopefully we'll be there together with some Canadian athletes and some Israeli athletes, and making a useful contribution.
Yeah. I hope I'm there with you to check it all out. I mean, I'm encouraged by the development of cycling in Israel. I mean, we have 4 Israelis on our team now, and how many in the continental team? I think we're 6 or 7 on the continental team.
So we've got we've got 10, 11 Israeli riders, both on the World Tour team and up and coming. So yeah, that's quite an achievement. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 6 Canadians as well. And
Right.
of course, both of us are good friends of Kevin Field, who's the road coach of the national team, a Canadian national team, and you are helping out with various training camps and training programs for the National Cyclists of Canada, and of course you have direct responsibility for 6 of them, six of the potential national selections, being involved with the Israel Startup Nation and the Israeli Continental Team. So so we'll be there for Canada and for Israel in Tokyo, and I hope you'll join me.
Yeah. So I asked a couple of people, I said, if you had a question to ask Sylvan Adams, what would it be? And I asked 4 people, and 2 people asked me the same question. So that must be a point of interest. The question is, as a cyclist, what is his biggest gap and his biggest win?
So first of all, I'm happy that the question was about me as a cyclist rather than some bicycle team owner, big shot in the sport.
Yeah, right.
I'd rather be known as a cyclist, and so that already you've already pleased me with the question. So my biggest gap. So I'll tell you, I'm a bit of an all-rounder, and I'm not really good at anything. So I'm not a great climber. I'm not really a great time trialist. I'm not really a great sprinter. I'm not really good at anything. So I would have to say that my gap is that I'm not really excellent at anything, but I don't really have any glaring weaknesses. I kind of can manage. So I guess I would call myself a rouleur if I had to give myself a description as a cyclist. So I would say that I probably don't have any real strength, and that would be my glaring weakness.
Okay, I'm surprised you didn't say descending.
Sorry. No, listen, I'm a horrible descender. Everybody who rides with me knows how bad I am, and I actually get dropped. Sorry, that something. You're absolutely right. I actually get dropped in technical races where there are technical long descents. I actually get dropped, and that has been a determining factor in some of my results, and that's a bit of a shame. I used to be a better descender, and I guess I had 1 or 2 crashes too many, and I knocked myself on the head maybe 1 or 2 times too many, and I've kind of lost my nerve. And I used to, before I had won all these things, my dream as a cyclist, my real goal had been to win a national road race, and
right.
I was willing to do anything really, and take real risks to win the nationals. And I guess after I finally broke through, and I tried for years, every year it was one thing or another thing. I was always in the hunt. I was always close, but I never quite broke through. And eventually,
Right.
I achieved my goal, and it wasn't to win a world championship. My goal was to win road nationals, and by the way, including track, now I have 6 Canadian titles. So once I won once,
Right.
it sort of flowed from there, and you know, I broke the jinx, if you will.
Yeah.
And I was a much better. I wasn't fearful in those days, and I guess with age and with having having achieved all of my goals, or more than all of my goals that I ever set for myself in cycling, I guess I'm not hungry enough to take risks like I would have done when I was younger. And I always think when I'm descending, and it's one of the reasons you really can't think. You really have to let the bike flow. And in
Yeah.
fact, overthinking is probably less safe than just letting the wheels go and letting the bike flow. But somehow I'm always imagining, my tubular rolling off the rim,
Right.
or something terrible happening, some blind curve or some car coming up the wrong way, and I'm always imagining, the worst thing that can happen, and I'm a little bit tentative, and I don't like to reach those high speeds, and I'd like to keep things under control. And I'm hoping I now have my first disc brake
Break. Yep.
bike, road bike, and I'm hoping that with the confidence that I will have, that I'm able to stop on a dime, that I will be able to let the bike flow a little bit more, and my descending will improve a little bit. But you're absolutely right. That is my glaring weakness. Don't tell anybody, because they'll try to drop me in the defense.
Too late. That's the Garbarino secret.
What's that? That's the
That's
what?
a Garbarino secret.
Yeah. Shh, don't tell anybody.
Um, so, so the biggest win, in other words, the biggest strength that you have. I know what my answer would be. I'm curious you probably have already hinted or alluded to it before, but what's your biggest strength as a bike racer?
So, I mean, you've told me the best compliment you ever gave me was, you said, Sylvan, you have world-class drive. And, I'm not the best physical athlete. I came to the sport late. I have certain deficiencies, like you said, in descending, and others. And, and I don't have the biggest engine around, but you told me that I have world-class drive that you would love to transplant from me into some of your Olympic hopefuls that have a lot of
Yeah.
talent and somehow are missing the mental side to achieve. So I would have to say that clearly the mental side of my game would be my strength.
And if we can even filter it down more, in my opinion, just watching you over the years, is there's an element to you of belief. You have a belief in yourself that maybe is rooted in that mindset that you have. That belief system kind of it allows you to sort of perpetually punch above your weight because you
I'm,
always think you can win.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Oh
I
no.
No, I'm going to disagree with that. I don't have that deep belief that you're talking about. I come to a race scared and nervous, and I think it's a healthy thing to be scared
Yep.
and nervous about the unknown and about what could happen. But I don't let the fear debilitate me. I use the fear as a motivator, because if you really ask me what my strength is, I would say I have pride. You know, I'm
Right.
always
Okay.
racing for my own personal pride, both my pride to the outside world, but mostly my pride to myself. I want to feel
Okay.
happy with myself, and I race for pride. So that fear of failure is actually a motivator for me to overachieve because I want to be happy with myself and I want to satisfy that pride.
Interesting. You just
So I
taught
would say
something there. Mindset.
it's not a deep held belief. It's actually kind of
Right.
the opposite.
Right.
It's
Right.
the
Right.
fear.
But it does
It's
allow
the fear of failure.
it does allow you to punch above your weight pretty regularly, and it's kind of one of the reasons why I love it when you participate in team events and you're there riding with the guys in camps and stuff like that. I'm hoping it rubs off on them. Not that they necessarily, not everybody needs it, but it's a great thing to have, and it's kind of the
So
ethos
riding
that
with
I
them,
like our team to have.
so if I can just say, riding with
Yeah.
them brings out my pride. I want them to respect me, So I don't want them to think, okay, the owner came with us and he's useless and whatever. I want them to respect me. So I actually ride considerably better than my abilities when I'm riding with those guys because I want to be one of them. Like I want them to accept me, and it's about pride. It's about pride. It's the same pride that I bring to races.
Wow. And I'm hoping that our team has a similar ethos in the sense that we punch above our weight, That's kind of, we're going to be the bad news bears of this sport in the sense.
We have to. We have to because, we don't have the big budget of Ineos, Team Ineos or Jumbo Visma. We don't have those, mega budgets or Astana or these teams. We don't have those mega budgets. I'm supporting the team with my own money, with a little bit of help from my couple of partners, and so I hope that more people will jump on our bandwagon and we'll be able to grow into a bigger budget. But as of today, we really have to punch above our weight. So we're looking for scrappy
Fighters.
overachievers. Yeah, overachievers. I guess in the mold of the team owner, that they will overachieve and make us proud. And we had, before the Corona shut us down, we had a couple of wins this year, which I think turned some heads and surprised some people. So we had 29 wins as a Pro Conti team in 2019. I think that surprised a lot of people. So I think we are a scrappy team. And we brought some guys. We have some guys who have things to prove, including some former stars like Dan Martin. He has things to prove, both to himself and to the outside world about, coming back to that level. And we're trying to create and nurture him and create an environment for him to be able to reach that again. And I think we could say the same thing about Andre Greipel.
Sure.
He has such a storied and beautiful palmarès, and he had a terrible year the year before coming to us, and so I think he has some things to prove as well, and we're hoping that both of those guys achieve and do prove both to themselves and to the rest of the world through some beautiful victories.
Yeah, and so speaking of pro cycling, we all know that things have been shut down, obviously, with this terrible crisis, and I'm not going to get into the crisis piece because we could be on there for 2 hours, Sylvan, with that one. But do you think that, given that everything has been shut down, that this is an opportunity to perhaps think about almost hitting the reset button on professional cycling, to maybe rethink the model of how it all works? Do you think there's an opportunity here for that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
So I'm going to say a couple of things before I actually address that issue. Firstly, I hope that all of the teams survive. Certainly all of the teams at the World Tour level. I think it'll be even more difficult for the ones at the pro level, Pro Conti, what they used to call Pro Conti, the pro level, and even the continental teams. I mean, I think this is a precarious time where a lot of the sponsors, businesses, have really been shut down, and they have no revenue coming in, and they're not getting the visibility. It's a double whammy. They don't have any revenue coming in their main business, and the sport is not offering them the marketing vehicle that they were counting on. So I think this is putting some teams in some real precarious in a precarious situation, and I'm hoping that everybody survives. I really would like to see the sport continue, and I have great respect for all of the teams, and of course, the fewer teams that we have, the fewer riders will have employment. So I'm hoping that the teams do survive, but if they don't, we'll have to adapt. And so to answer your question, one of the ways in which we might adapt, we are a very funny sport. We derive all of our revenue sponsorship. We get no TV revenue. We get we don't sell any tickets because it's all open and free. And so if you take Manchester United or the New York Yankees or the Montreal Canadiens, and most of their revenue comes from TV. Secondarily, it comes from selling tickets, and they also do sponsorship just like us. But sponsorship really is miscellaneous revenue. It's a miscellaneous revenue item on their income statement. So it would be nice if teams could share in some of that TV revenue. There's a lot of revenue to be had. 2.6 billion people watched the Tour de France. It's the most watched sporting event, other than perhaps Formula One. Other than Formula One racing, because they have 22 races, and each race they get, something like 400,000 people watching. So if you take 400,000 times 22, you're talking billions. You're talking 8 billion views. Well, the Tour got 2.6 billion views over the 3-week period. So it's possibly the second, third, or fourth most watched sporting event in the world after Olympic Games, World Cups, and, as I said, Formula One. So there is a lot of TV revenue to be had, and the company that owns the Tour, ASO, Amaury Sports Organization, they just keep the revenue to themselves, and it's their biggest revenue producer, and they don't share in the TV revenue. So it would be nice if we found a different way to finance the sport. Of course, the riders would be the beneficiaries. Professional cyclists make a lot less money than than players in other sports. The minimum salary in the NHL is something like $500,000-$600,000. That would
US,
be pretty darn good. Yeah, that'd be pretty darn good wage for a cyclist. And the NBA, I think the minimum is something like $2 million or some crazy number like that. And you could probably count on two hands the number of cyclists who make $2 million. So if we were able to raise the revenue to the teams, certainly the athletes would be beneficiaries. I'm not looking to make money on this sport, unlike some of these other professional sports. I'm happy to be a contributor, to be a philanthropic contributor to the team. But it would be nice to see some of the sports real revenues, and really it's TV revenues, go to race organizers, because we need them, and go also to the teams. So maybe this is an opportunity. I know that there have been initiatives in the past to try to wrest some of the power from these race organizers like ASO, and it hasn't worked because of the power of the Tour. So it hasn't worked in the past. Will this be an opportunity? It's hard to say. I mean, the Tour is still the Tour, and it will require real veterans of the sport, and I don't include myself in that, people with deep roots to the sport of professional cycling, to come up with a new model. And I'm hoping that we'll have a better ear from some of the race organizers to at least consider a different way to finance the sport. Because if we see the disappearance of teams and the sport shrinks, that benefits nobody. And I fear that we will see the disappearance of a few teams that won't make it to 2021 and might not even make it to the end of 2020. I hear some pretty bad stories about a few of the teams. And as I said, I'm a cheerleader. I want them all to make it. I would like our sport. We have 19 World Tour teams. I'd like to finish 2020 and enter 2021 with the same 19 World Tour teams. And I would be very sorry to see some of these very beautiful teams fold, but they're under some severe financial pressure already. There has been, they've had to go back to their riders and to their staff, and in some cases, impose on them 70% wage reductions. And this is a problem. This is, it's a problem because they just can't afford it at this point, and survival is at stake. So, the riders and the staff, they've been cooperative. We're one big family really in this sport. We depend on each other, and so I hope that it leads to a discussion where we see some progress on that front. Yes, it's an opportunity. I'm not sure it will be realized because there have been initiatives in the past. Again, they weren't brought forward under the pressures of what's taken place this year, and the financial pressures going forward on some of the teams. The sponsors who have been hurt, they're not coming back so quickly. Right. It's not like they can turn the switch has been turned off. It's not like they can turn the switch full on and then they're flush again and ready to contribute at the same level as in the past. And I think we'll see fewer sponsors. So there are a few teams that are not very vulnerable. I consider my team to be one of those teams because we're not heavily reliant on sponsors. We do have sponsors that provide a certain percentage of our budget, but we're basically supported by the team ownership, and as I said, which is a philanthropic venture. So in a sense, we're a little bit more stable than some of the other teams.
Yeah, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed too for the survival of these World Tour teams into next year, and even as at the end of this year, hopefully the racing season will pick up again in August, like they're saying it will. Sylvan, thank you, man, for your time. It's always great to hear you tell your stories. You're a great storyteller, and I appreciate you giving up so close to the edge of your champagne time, an interview with me, man. We've never really done this before. We always have these conversations, but it's never really anything we record. So thank you for your participation.
We have these conversations at champagne time. So everybody who knows me, I don't drink. I drink every night, but I have a rule. I'm not allowed to drink before 5 o'clock. So, because if I started to drink before 5 o'clock, I would be an alcoholic. And so I think I'm still on the right side of that line. But you and I have had many glasses of champagne out on my beautiful balcony overlooking the Mediterranean.
I would like to end this discussion with you showing our viewers one of the most beautiful views in the world. You will see Tel Aviv. If you don't mind giving us a view from your balcony, Sylvan, they're just not going to believe how beautiful this view is.
Okay, so I'm going to grab this. And I'm going to walk over to the balcony because of the wind. I didn't want to do this outside, but it's beautiful enough to do it outside every day, as we know. I'm going to show you the infinite sunset. It's a little early for the sunset, so we will have a little bit of glare. But here I am, opening the balcony door and taking you outside with a beautiful view, my view of the Mediterranean.
Wow.
As you can see, is there too much glare, or can you see?
No, it looks great. It looks great, and maybe show us the coastline, the beach, Sylvan.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you up and down the beach. So this is north. Do you see well here?
A little further down.
Okay. How's this?
There, right there. Perfect.
Okay. So this is north, and I'm going to take you on a tour of the beach like this, all the way down. And I'm going to take you to biblical historical Jaffa. Do you see Jaffa here? Do you have a good view?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is where Jonah was swallowed by the whale off the coast of Jaffa, right over there. Historical biblical Jaffa, which is a wonderful place. It's about 50% populated by Arab Israeli citizens and Jewish Israeli citizens.
It's a very mixed community. It's a very it's getting gentrified, I have to say, and it's a very funky, fun, unique, unique in the world, unique place in the world. And so I tell everyone, I think that Tel Aviv is a hybrid of Miami Beach and Rio de Janeiro, spiced with this biblical Jaffa and our attachment here in the Middle East. So it's a unique city, and of course, I mean, I don't have to say about the national capital of Jerusalem, how exceptional it is, and it's the home of the three great monotheistic Abrahamic faiths. And I am the self-appointed ambassador for Israel. So by all means, anyone who's watching, if you have any curiosity, you will not be disappointed. Everyone who comes here for the first time is blown away. They cannot believe that this is the country that is covered in the media in such a ridiculously biased and unidimensional way. Israel is open, tolerant, pluralistic, fiercely democratic, and most of all safe. I walk on my sandals here in Tel Aviv every day, and ride my bike and everything else. So come for a visit, guys. Paulo is now. I think I've 3/4 convinced him to move here and make Aliyah. But he's fallen in love with the place, and of course this is where we call home. So I was happy to show off my beautiful balcony. I'm privileged to live in this wonderful place, and I encourage anyone who hasn't come here to come and visit.
Thank you, Sylvan, and enjoy your champagne. Laila Tov.
Erev Tov. It's only evening. Erev Tov. Yeah, you have to work on your Hebrew a little bit. No problem. Thank you, bud. Nice talking to you.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.